This video is a compilation of speeches which were made a few weeks ago at a rally for Sir Neill Fraser at Parliament House in Hobart, Tasmania. I've included 4 different speeches, each of which covers different aspects of Sue's case. I will add my own commentary at various points along the way. However, I feel that these speeches truly can stand on their own without my additional commentary. So I'll keep my bits brief.
Sue has been demonised enough. Sue did not kill her first husband, and her former mother-in-law, Sydney, is here today to talk further about this vicious rumour, because vicious it is. And the rumour has circulated for years. Sue also didn't murder the husband she supposedly had in Scotland before she moved to Tasmania. Sue was 6 years old at the time. Detail that the people spreading this rumour are obviously not concerned about. Sue was not involved in the disappearance of a young man, Dennis O'Dea. It is an utter disgrace that the DPP made reference to Sue's involvement in Mr O'Dea's disappearance in his closing address to the jury. The DPP said, very hard you would have thought with her involvement with the disappearing young Mr O'Dea, and what had happened to him no one knew, disappeared, no body. There had been no mention of Mr O'Dea's disappearance through the entire trial because it wasn't relevant. But the DPP's words must have left the jury with the idea that Sue had been involved in another disappearance, and the judge and Sue's barrister allowed this to happen.
Firstly, this is a classic example of the tactics used by the prosecution. They were underhanded and illegal. Imagine telling a jury in your closing argument that the person that you're trying to convict was also responsible for the disappearance of another person. When it's not been brought up in the case, it's not relevant to the case, and there is absolutely no evidence to suggest this is the case because it's a load of bullshit. I wonder what the jury were thinking. And it certainly speaks to the inadequacies of Sue's counsel to let something like that go without any contest. That should have been contested. It should have been pointed out to the jury that it was unfounded speculation, and yet the moron just let it go. And as for the judge, it's their job to prevent these sorts of things from happening, to call out lawyers when they overstep the bounds. Why did this judge do nothing? Surely these things alone are a huge argument for a mistrial.
Sue did not murder Dennis O'Dea and chuck him down a well on her farm, something else she has been accused of doing. The coroner has found that Mr O'Dea sadly took his own life. The rumours about Sue and Dennis O'Dea were started by a disgruntled former friend of Sue's who had spread a number of rumours about her. If I was a member of the jury at Sue's trial, I would be pretty angry to know that the information I was given was not true. But Sue has not been the only person suffering from the actions of some members of Tas Police. People who have recognised this great injustice and tried to help by ferreting out new witnesses and discovering new evidence have been targeted by police, homes have been raided, bank accounts gone through, personal and work files and film footage seized. People have been arrested and some charged with perverting the course of justice, all because they tried to help Sue. It is a real shame that the police officers involved in Sue's case did not put as much effort and resources into finding who really killed Bob as they have done in defending the conviction of Sue.
And for this, Detectives Sinnott and Powell were both given awards for their work on the Sue Neill Fraser case. How insane is that? What sort of state rewards people for corruption?
Efforts have also been made to discredit Sue's supporters. Inspector Powell has referred to support group members as the Blue Rinse Brigade. We have been described as deluded. We have been called Sue's well-heeled family and friends. Well, for the record, most people in the support group only met Sue when she was released from prison, and if only we were well-heeled. On December the 4th, 2021, an article in the Australian newspaper said, "When does a fight for justice become an obsessive crusade fueled by conspiracy theories and wishful thinking? That moment for many has arrived in the case of the 12-year campaign to free Susan Neill Fraser." In the same article, it was said that Bob Chappell's family are pleading for an end to more than a decade of campaigning, legal manoeuvres and muckraking. Well, what about the muckraking that has gone on with the attempts to discredit Sue and her support network? The past president of the Tasmanian Law Society, Simon Gates, has even waded into the debate. In a Mercury article on the 23rd of August 2022, titled "Neill Fraser's Supporters Risk Undermining Confidence in Legal System," he stated, "It is not enough that people speculate about the other possible theories or explanations. Any such hypothesis must be considered in the context of the evidence as a whole." Well, Mr Gates, our confidence in the Tasmanian justice system has already been severely undermined, partly because so much speculation was allowed at Sue's trial, and we have been asking that the evidence as a whole be considered for as long as this support group has existed.
In terms of evidence versus hypothesis, let's not forget also, there is far more evidence, solid evidence, to show that Sue Neill Fraser is innocent. Whereas the whole case put forward by prosecution was based on hypothesis. They invented a wrench. They even went in and put a wrench in front of the jury to suggest that that might have been.
The wrongful conviction of Sue Neill Fraser is a disgrace, and it could have happened to any of us. Sue's supporters will not rest until Sue has her name cleared by way of a properly independent commission of inquiry. So I finish with a message to the Tasmanian Attorney General. This is not going to go away. We are not going to go away. Deal with it, please. Thank you. Now, it's my great pleasure to introduce our second speaker, Sydney Ketchum, who is Sue's former mother-in-law. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Sydney, and for those who don't know me, I am Sue Neill Fraser's ex-mother-in-law. She's also the mother of my granddaughters, Emma and Sarah, and my very good friend. I'm going to say a few words today because I feel there's issues at stake here which are personal to me and which I'd like to address. The first is the pervasive rumor that Sue was responsible for the death of her first husband, who happens to be my son Brett, and he is well and alive. This rumor began shortly after the disappearance of Bob Chappell 15 years ago yesterday. I remember the first time I heard about this rumor. A friend of mine called to say that something interesting had happened at her bridge club that day. One of the members said, "Do you know that Sue Neill Fraser killed her first husband?" Well, my friend stood up and told her that was definitely not true because she had seen him live and well just recently. Still, the rumor continues today. And I'd like to know who benefits from slandering Sue's character. I would really like to challenge them. I first met Sue in the summer of 1979 when she came to our house for Thanksgiving celebration, and over the next few years came to know her quite well. After she and Brett married and had children, I lived with them for a year and was uniquely placed to observe Sue's interaction with my son and granddaughters. I was a part of their daily life for all that time, and despite the sometimes trying circumstances that are part and parcel of living on the land, I never at any time did I feel concern for their welfare or that she might be capable of inflicting harm on them or anyone else, man or beast. Sue always dealt with things in an extremely, manner that said, okay, this has happened, let's get on with it, let's solve this here and now. She would never resort to physical harm, ever. Even though Sue and Brett eventually parted ways, they continue to this day to attend family gatherings, and it's clear that they have retained a level of caring and mutual respect towards each other. Brett had supported Sue since she was first arrested in 2009. He sat through the entire trial and, like the rest of the close family, could not believe when she was convicted.
I'll add here that there is video footage of Brett Meeker attending Sue's trial. There's also video footage of him saying, look, this is me. I am definitely still alive. Forget the rumours. I think it's really sad that such a malicious rumour could be started, and the fact that even though it's been proven wrong, it still continues to this day.
As you can imagine, it came as a complete shock to sit in court and hear these accusations levelled at her, some of which I knew to be untrue, and especially as no one from Tasmanian police ever spoke to me or my son or other family or close members about Sue to ask whether we had observed any worrying behaviour in the past.
Well, of course not, because were they to interview anybody who knew Sue, it would have gone against their case. And of course, those interviews would have had to have been available to Sue's defence. Their case would have been shot to pieces had they interviewed any of the many people who were close to Sue at the time of Bob's disappearance.
I, as a friend of Sue and a member of the Sue Neill Fraser support group, would like to think that by now the state government would have called for a commission of inquiry into Sue's conviction and these irregularities. However, after observing the way our system of justice operates, I truly believe we need a criminal cases review commission, where cases such as this can be re-examined through the lens of a truly independent federal authority. Sue was not responsible for the death of her first husband, Brett Meeker. He's alive and well. Sue was not responsible for the death of Bob Chappell. Sadly, Bob is still missing. We need justice for Bob. We need justice for Sue now. Thank you.
I believe that Sydney is correct when she talks about this needing to be looked at on a federal level. I think there's too much of a boys' club in Tasmania. There's too much corruption. There's too many people whose asses are on the line if it comes out that they helped convict an innocent woman. I think the best chance or perhaps the only chance, of justice for Sue to clear her name is for it to be dealt with outside of Tasmania. Tasmanian Parliament will never do the right thing by Sue. Tasmanian judiciary will never do the right thing by Sue. They're all in each other's pockets. It's not in their interests to do the right thing by Sue.
As Rosie said, I've been asked to speak on why I became involved in the Sue Neill Fraser support group. Sue's late mother, Helen Neill Fraser, was one of my parishioners when I was the rector at St George's Anglican Church, Battery Point, the tower on the hill, just over there. And one of Sue's daughters wanted to be married at the family church, and through these contacts I came to know Sue and Bob and the family. I remember Sue telling me about Bob going missing and the hours she'd spent trustingly talking with police without a lawyer present. Why would one not trust them? They're all trying to find Bob, and she had nothing to hide. I also remember the shock and disbelief when Sue became a suspect. I didn't go to the trial, partly because I was too busy to take that amount of time off, but primarily because it was ridiculous to think anyone could be convicted when there was no body, no weapon, and no motive. As one reads the trial transcript, there seems to have been, if not a contempt of court, then a clear contempt for any sense of justice or integrity. We find that in the early acknowledgement of the jury being told there was blood in the dinghy, when the DPP acknowledged in a closed discussion with only the judge and defence present that there wasn't any blood in the dinghy, and neither the defence nor the judge seemed to consider it important that the jury were told of that error. Again, the so-called experts saying the luminol response in the dinghy, a glow or sparkling, usually indicated blood, yet subsequent tests proved it wasn't. And again, the jury were not informed of those test results. The jury being told Sue had used a latex glove to clean up the scene, yet never being clearly informed that it was Bob's son's DNA in that glove, not Sue's. I could go on, but these failures of our legal system are documented in forensic detail on the Save Sue website. Not only was 13 years of joyous grandparenting stolen from Sue, but there was the very real potential of moral injury inflicted on the women and men on the jury, repeatedly misled and never corrected. The jury then had to make a decision based on false and unchallenged assertions by the prosecution and the judge.
And of course, for anyone looking into Sue's case, it is blatantly obvious that the judge acted unprofessionally. The prosecution acted unprofessionally. And worst of all, the defence let it all slide. With a better defence, Sue should never have been convicted. The fact that she had such poor representation should be grounds to contest her conviction.
I may not feel any moral injury now, but once Sue is exonerated, they will. To quote Dr. Bob Moles, Adjunct Associate Professor at Flinders University, a circumstantial case is one where there are no direct evidence or eyewitness to the event in question. The surrounding circumstance then provide the only basis for the drawing of appropriate inferences. In such cases, there are special rules that apply. In this case, the judge correctly observed that in a circumstantial case, the conclusion of guilt has to be the only rational conclusion open on the evidence the jury accepts. He says, if there is any rational hypothesis or any sensible theory consistent with innocence, then Neill Fraser has to be acquitted. The judge explained how obvious alternative explanations relating to disappearance, accident and suicide could be excluded. If he was mistaken in respect of any of those, then it would mean that a rational explanation consistent with innocence of Miss Neill Fraser was still open on the facts, and the conviction should therefore be overturned. Dr. Miles then concludes with these words: as the judge explained in his earlier remarks to the jury, basing your verdict on the evidence means you must not use guesswork or speculation in arriving at your verdict. This is precisely what the judge himself has done.
I have shortened this particular speech in the interests of both copyright and in the interests of time. It's actually a really good speech, and I'll link the entire clip in my description. However, I will mention that Reverend Langlois did discuss the many misleading statements that the judge made in his closing arguments, which were incorrect and which served to misinform the jury.
If it could be said that these inappropriate statements by the judge might have influenced the jury on arriving at their verdict, then as with earlier issues, Dr. Miles says, the verdict must be set aside. I invite you to read the full account of Dr. Miles' address. A link can be found on the Save Sue website. So where does all that leave us? For me, the court system is an essential part of our society. We need a system in our community which will hold us to account. I'm also very conscious of my own frailty and failings. That's why I'm a Christian. I need forgiveness. I suspect Supreme Court judges are no less human than me, and also have flaws and failings. So who holds them to account, especially in a small community the size of Tasmania? Even I have been to a dinner with the Chief Justice at a mutual friend's house. Everyone is too connected here in Tassie. What we need is a National Criminal Case Review Commission where eagle eyes, not related to anyone in this state, can review cases and correct oversights and mistakes, and if necessary, deal with criminal neglect. Will you stand with us, sign the petition, and talk to your representative? Thank you.
Before moving on to the next clip, I think it's important to note here that Reverend Langlois and his wife are both well known and held in high regard throughout Tasmania's Christian community. And I'm not just talking within the Anglican community. I'm talking throughout the entire Hobart Christian community. So for someone of this calibre to come forward in support of Sue, to me that says so much about who Sue is as a person. The final clip is an interview with Neill Fraser's daughter, Sarah Bowles. Because it was done as an interview, as opposed to a speech with the advantage of a sound system, the sound's not great, so I've added captions to compensate for that.
Tell us about the rally today. Are you pleased that there was a reasonable crowd here to hear and speak?
Yeah, I think it's great that we keep in the public eye and pushing for the need for an independent criminal case review commission at the federal level. So I think it's wonderful that this is kept in the forefront of people's minds in Tasmania.
There's a lot of talk there from, like Rosie was saying, even though Sue, your mum's out, you know, this isn't over. Just go into a bit of detail, what would you like to see?
Yeah, I think we're in a really interesting time at the moment, not being before the courts. So we've got some other opportunities before us at present. And I think the importance of a federally seat oversight in the form of a criminal case review commission is really important. I think something that's heavily independent from the state. That's something that we heard repeatedly from people speaking today, was the necessity that any examination of Mum's case is independent independent, and that there's a degree of oversight at a federal level that may afford that independence.
As already mentioned, I agree with this statement completely. And I'll go a step further and say that I believe that the only way of gaining any resolution here is by taking it outside of Tasmania.
Rosie said on occasion she has been tickled, Sarah. Is that a problem for her?
I've never been with Mum and experienced her being treated in any way by community members than of support, to be honest. So, obviously Mum has experienced some form of harassment while she's been out in the community, but I must say that whenever I've been present with her, or when my children have been with her, that has never been the case. We've only ever had a lot of support from people.
And Sarah, can you talk to me? I mean, there's 13 years that we didn't get with your mother on the outside. Can you talk to me what life's been like since she was released for you as a family, and what life's been like for your mum?
Look, Mum being out has been absolutely incredible for me personally. She's been able to develop really meaningful relationships with my children. She's looked after them while I've been at work. She's had the entire school holidays with them pretty much this summer.
I love that Sarah puts a positive spin on everything, but it does make me sad to think that Sue was deprived of so many of those precious years with her grandchildren when they were still really young. So many milestones missed.
So it's been really lovely in terms of her being able to have meaningful relationships, but obviously nothing can make up for what she's been through and the time that we've lost. So we're sort of choosing to look at it in a positive way, but I think always remembering that she is still convicted, she is on parole, she lives with the limitations of that parole. She's unable to speak with you, I'm here speaking with you, she's unable to leave the state. She has many, many limitations on her life and quality of life.
I think it is crucial that we bear this in mind. There are limitations on Sue. If Sue could come out and speak on her own behalf, I have no doubt that she would be able to speak so eloquently and so clearly, and it would help her case. But she's been silenced by the parole board. If Sue was given the freedom that she deserves, it could make such a difference to her life.
I think it's really important that we don't just think, well, she's out now, this is over. Indeed, I think it's why we need to continue to push and keep the pressure on for this criminal case review commission that's entirely independent of Tasmania.
How grateful were you for Sydney over here to speak up? Obviously there'd been rumours around, as talked about today, about some other cases your mum might have been involved in. How important was that for her to come up and kind of, speak publicly?
I think it was wonderful to have my grandmother speak today and to say publicly that her son, who is my father, is alive. I've said this multiple times, but it's interesting how rumours are far more salacious. Information seems to be far easily spread than the truth. So to have Grandmama so beautifully and articulately stand up today and put to bed some of those rumours once and for all was fantastic.
It really is a sad state of affairs when people choose to believe salacious rumours. Of course, it really doesn't help that a lot of the time these rumours are started by the media, because not only do they know that it sells more papers if you can create scandal and rumour, but at the same time, sadly in Sue's case, the prosecution used the media to push their own cause. A lot of what happened with Sue was trial by media, and the repercussions are still being seen.
And today's rally is one thing, but what will you be saying to, if given the chance, to Mr. Roxburgh about it, and what will you be pushing for in the next 12 months?
Look, ultimately, I think that whilst this is a state matter, as we said, the importance is to look at a federal criminal case review commission, something that sits outside and above the Tasmanian situation is really, really important because of all of the things that we heard today. And this is not just about Mum's case, this is about all the other cases. This is about having a sense of, respect and integrity in our justice system. And I guess it begs the question, why wouldn't we? If we can have such faith in the outcomes of our criminal justice system, our policing and the systems within Tasmania, why would we be so adverse to having a federal body that was able to independently review cases such as these that continue to be in the public eye, that continue to have unanswered questions? Thank you.
I was going to say one last question.
Sure.
What's your message to people? There's a lot of people, obviously, you've got people here that think she's innocent. There's still a lot of people that think your mum was guilty. What's your message to those people who still believe she's guilty and are pretty hard and not moving on the position on that? What would be your message from a day like this?
Well, ultimately, this is not about whether someone is found to be innocent or guilty or how people might feel about somebody. This is about the integrity of the justice system. This is about a miscarriage of justice. Now, a miscarriage of justice can occur in situations where someone may indeed be guilty. It's actually not the point. The point is about maintaining integrity in the systems and processes that govern us as a whole. And that's why we say we need this independent criminal case review commission with federal oversight.